Let's think about something weak being titrated with something strong. Actually, we've already looked at this example. It was the one that I developed with this nice picture right here. And to summarize it in terms of our buckets, and I always encourage you to draw these buckets, we have our 4 cases along the titration curve. Titrating of weak acid with strong base. I start with weak acid, and I use the weak acid equation. I run through the buffer region, where I use the buffer. I keep adding the strong base until I've completely neutralized the weak acid, and now I'm in the weak base terrain, and I use the weak base equation. And then I have excess strong base, and so I am able to calculate it from the strong base equation. Weak acid equation, buffer equation, weak base equation, strong base equation. Not quite as simple as the case of strong titrating strong, but still something that we can be pretty comfortable with in terms of following stepwise through the process. What does this sort of picture look like? Well, frankly, it's not all that different from a strong acid case. If we compare it, what we tend to notice is that it's a little bit sloppier in terms of what the pH looks like. It's because it's the difference between having strong acid or strong base and water, so it's a much more abrupt change, and weak acid and buffer through some endpoint to strong base. So this region here, when you're looking at the titration of a weak acid with a strong base, kind of smears a little as I run through the weak acid region into the buffer region. And this case over here kind of smears a little as I run from the weak base through the buffer region. But it still shares in common the fact that it gets to an endpoint where there's an abrupt change, blue to yellow, green to red, and that there's an inflection point in that change which corresponds to when I've converted from weak acid to weak base in this case, or weak base to weak acid in this case. Now, once I get past that point, I have only excess of the stuff I was titrating with. Only excess strong base here, only excess strong acid there. Bucket of weak acid, bucket of buffer, bucket of weak base, bucket of strong base. Bucket of weak base, bucket of buffer, bucket of weak acid, bucket of strong acid.